Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to do a Tacoma suspension swap with my 4th gen 4Runner. That will be the front shocks and struts, and in the rear I'll do a upgraded 4Runner and a leveling kit. So let's get started. So here are the basic tools: 19, 17, and a 14 and a 12 millimeter wrench, some brake cleaner, some penetrating oil liquid wrench, breaker bar, hammer, a rubber mallet, and some jack stands. Here's the stock height, 33.5 inches in the front, and in the back, right there's 35 inches. And if you measure from the center of the wheel, it's 19 in the front and 21 in the back. Just want to be safe, put some tire chocks in the front, and you want to remove your undercarriage cover. If it's 2 parts on the 4th gen, gets you exposed to all the suspension parts a lot easier. Remove your front tire. The second half of this video will be the rear. So here's the 3 mounting of the shock of the front. And I just want to spray everything with liquid wrench so everything comes off a lot easier. Alright, spray the top mounts, and then that one, and then the alignment, the front and the back, and then the knuckle bolts underneath, and of course do the same with the other side. Now we just start removing all the parts. I'll use 17 or 19 millimeter. In the rear you need a 12 and a 14 millimeter, but in the front you will not need that. So go ahead and loosen this. And then if you jack up both sides, this should be pretty easy to remove out. If you don't, you might need a little rubber mallet. And this is the lower mount for the shock, 19 millimeter. And then for your front and rear alignment bolts, just want to make sure you mark it, and so you can put it back in the same position. And then of course you'll need alignment anyways, but at least for the time being, if you can't get an alignment, it should be pretty aligned with just a 2-inch lift. There's a larger 19 millimeter bolt, and you want to mark the front and the back, and the front and the back of the rear piece as well. So four total places to mark. And then the knuckle bolts underneath, 2 19 millimeters. And these you might need a breaker bar, but it shouldn't be too bad. So since I don't have a second person, I just did the bottle jack from the car to kind of brace it, because once you knock out this pin that holds the lower part of the shock, this lower control arm will tend to fall. So something to brace it. Just a little rubber mallet to knock out the pin that holds the lower part of the shock in. And then this didn't dramatically fall, so it's not the end of the world if you didn't have something to brace it. And here's another angle of it being removed, and the top required 14 millimeters. I do recommend the ratcheting wrenches. It'll save you a lot of time, especially with the bolt in the back. So pretty cheap from Amazon or Harbor Freight. I'll put a link below on the cheapest one I got. So this is a stock 05 4Runner 4th gen, and I replaced it with a 2018 Toyota Tacoma suspension. The front doesn't need any modification for the Tacoma suspension, but the rear needs a lower bushing that needs to be replaced. But I have heard the ride being pretty soft in the rear since Tacomas don't usually have a lot of weight in the rear compared to SUV style. And with the shock in, just kind of do it in reverse order. Torque specs are on some forums. I'll try and leave a link below, but I usually just do them as tight as I can. Usually suspension bolts all around 100 to 130 foot-pounds of torque. Make sure your lines line up for your alignment bolts, the front and the back. And here's the after measurement, 36.5. It's about 2.5, 3 inch gain. So now we'll go back and do the rear. And the rear, I decided to go with a 2020 4Runner shock, and as well as a Daystar 1.5 inch lift to have my car level. Because right now is about 1.5 inch difference. So using a 14 and 12 millimeter bolt, you want to remove this stabilizer piece right here from the. You do need a 14 millimeter on the bottom. And here's it removed. Now you want to do the lower shock mount. And that's a 19 millimeter. You want a little hammer, and you want to use your jack and jack up your suspension a little bit, make it a little easier to pop out. And then you want to remove your jacks so your suspension can lower down so you can remove the rear spring. And I didn't replace the rear shock, so yeah, I just did the spring and the spacer. And that's pretty much it. You can see a height difference, pretty much a 1/4 inch, maybe 1/2 inch at most, but I mostly just want a new set of springs. I got these for pretty cheap on Craigslist. But they are the same size, just a smidge little higher on the newer, heavier 5th gen 4Runner. And this is all the suspension parts out, and you do want a little bottleneck so you can push down the suspension a little bit, because the spacer obviously is going to take more room on top, so you do need a little more space to put everything back in. And here's my new height. Now 23 inches, before it was 21, so got about 1.5 inches to 2 inches in the rear. It'll settle a little bit, so it might go down a smidge, but that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, leave in the comments below. Thank you.